Well, we are continuing on with a very special guest this morning, and we are being honored by having some select veterans in the studio with us today, Bob, and it's just been incredible. We had earlier Sergeant Todd Adams. He's still in the studio with us, and he's recently home of a 4-year tour with the Marine Corps and recently served in Iraq. We just had an incredible interview and discussion with Marion Hull, who is a World War II vet, served in the Navy, and his experiences there. And we are delighted to welcome to the studio now Bob Hines. He's a World War II vet, served, it was in the Pearl Harbor situation there. And Bob, nice to have you, my friend.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Good to see you. Now, what branch of the service?
U.S. Navy.
U.S. Navy. And what was your rank?
Well, I went in as an apprentice seaman, came out as a chief yeoman.
And what is that?
Yeoman does office work.
Office work.
Yeah.
And you, how long was your tour?
Well, when I went in 1940, I had to go in for 6 years. I believe it's 4 now.
Okay. Now, were you drafted like?
No.
You enlisted?
No, I went in voluntarily because my mom and dad had separated, and she didn't have any income. So I felt that by going to the service in the Navy, I could make an allotment to her and each month, and so I did right through the 6 years that I was in. She got most of my pay because I had a godly mother, and I wanted to take care of her, so that was the reason I went in.
No kidding. Wow. And for 6 years, you supported your mom on a measly pay.
I kept about $15 to $20 a month. And then as I was increasing rank, I'd make a little more. Well, she got a little more, so it worked out real nice.
Well, what an incredible time. Now, you were in Pearl Harbor. And an incredible day. I have seen some movies and pictures, and I've been to Pearl Harbor. Have you been back?
No, never have been back. When we came back, we bypassed Hawaii, so I've never been back, no.
Well, I tell you, it's a stunning moment in my life when I sat at the top of USS Arizona and looking down. And of course, then before you go out there, you go through the museum and you see the movies and incredible. But let's go directly to that day. Where were you?
I was on USS Dobbin, destroyer tender. We made repairs on destroyers, and I was below decks reading Sunday Funnies. And it wasn't time to go to worship yet. So, and I looked out the porthole, and I see fires going over at the air station nearby. Turned out that the Japanese were bombing, the pilots were bombing the airstrip there. And I thought, when I first looked out and saw them doing that, I thought, well, that's a new method of fighting fire from the air, I didn't think much about it. And I went back to reading the funnies. A little bit later, one of their planes came out over the ship, and as he banked, you could see that rising sun emblem on the bottom of his wings.
Right.
Then we knew then. And someone announced over the PA system that says, this is the real thing. We're in war. Man, your battle station's on the double. So we did.
Wow. And what was your battle station?
I was on a 3-inch aircraft gun, second loader. And the first loader got killed during the attack, and then I was moved up a notch.
And you went to first loader.
Yeah.
And what is the role of a first loader?
Well, putting the projectile in the breech, in the gun.
Whoa. So you saw a lot of action that day.
Quite a bit, yeah.
Now, it must have been a shock for the Japanese to show up in Pearl Harbor.
Yeah. We couldn't believe it. Some of us had to go topside and have a good look. We couldn't believe we were in a war, It's so sudden, such a surprise.
Bob, what was we were talking earlier about the Doolittle raid, but before that, what was the country's reaction? What was to Pearl Harbor? What was the reaction? They did a lot of damage. What was the country's state of morale after that attack?
It was very low. Morale was very low. And we'd lost so much there at Pearl that they were waiting for something to happen. So that's why the Doolittle raid was instigated. Colonel Doolittle, and there were 80.
James, yeah.
That's another story, but there were 80 flyers involved in the Doolittle raid, and 8 were captured, and 3 were executed.
Yeah,
And one of those was beheaded.
How?
That's another story.
How? I want to come back to those stories. How long was the Pearl Harbor battle? How long? I mean,
About 2.5 hours.
2.5 hours.
Yeah, because see, they came in waves. They didn't all come at one time. There were a total of about 360 planes the Japanese used, and they came at intervals. And all together, I'd say 2.5 hours.
So it just felt like they kept coming and coming and coming.
Yeah, they did. Yeah.
And now you obviously we've seen some movies, reenactments, but we've also seen some pictures. Did you actually see some of those big ships go down?
Yes, but the movie was in no way like the real thing was. No way. There was no romance like in the movie.
No.
I think there was one girl and 2 guys.
Yeah.
But no, we didn't have any of that. As to your question, action, yes. I saw the battleship Utah was the first one to roll over. It capsized.
It rolled over.
Yeah.
And you saw that happen.
Yeah. And
Wow.
It entombed a bunch of men in there for about 24 hours. And they tried to cut through the bottom of the ship with the torches. The torches wouldn't cut through the steel. So they had to bring in the special drills, drilled holes enough so the men could come out.
Wow. And that wasn't the case with the Arizona, though.
No, it was hit below water and just sat right down.
Wow. Now, what happened to you after Pearl Harbor? I mean, you were still in. The whole war, escalated to whole new dimensions. Where were you sent?
After the war?
No, after Pearl.
Oh, after Pearl. If you don't mind, I'd like to go back and pick up something before I answer that.
Okay.
There was a Japanese midget submarines got in the harbor, 2 of them, and we had 2 destroyers.
Was that during the actual attack?
Yes.
So 2 subs made it into the harbor.
Well, they were already in there, apparently. Maybe they came in the night before. We don't know that. But the 2 Japanese subs are in there, the midget subs, and we had 2 destroyers patrolling and over the area and dropping depth charges, and those depth charges churned up the water and brought up all kinds of debris and raw sewage and oil leaking from the sinking ships, and men were gagging and drowning in that stuff.
Wow.
Yeah, they were. So it was awful. It was awful.
All right.
The price of liberty is so high,
Now, I want to come back before we go on here. Were you a believer then? Were you a Christian?
No, I wasn't. No, I wasn't. I didn't come to know the Lord till we came to Oregon, over here at the little Community Bible Church in O'Brien. And my wife and I accepted Christ there.
Well,
so I went through the entire war. I went to service aboard my ship. We had I think it's about 10 of us went forward in the officers' quarters. We met there and had services with a chaplain. But the Catholics went ashore, and the Catholics, most of them, I don't know about the other ships, but they were ashore when the attack occurred, and they were scrambling to get back aboard ship. And by the time some of them got back, the attack was pretty much over. But we didn't have a Catholic chaplain on our ship, just a Protestant.
Okay.
Yes, I went through the motions. I went to service. There's about 10 of us in the service there, the Protestant. But I didn't know the Lord.
Huh.
No.
Did you pray that day?
Oh yes, I prayed.
Obviously he answered your prayer. You're still
well,
here.
yeah, I see he did. Yeah.
How old are you, Bob? Do you mind I ask?
Well, in 4 months I'll be 91.
Wow.
91.
And so, how old were you at Pearl then, when it happened?
I was 21.
About 21.
Another thing I'd like to mention, Perry, there. The worst I got out of it, I was spitting out particles of metal, and I couldn't figure out what they were, what caused it. So I was feeling my face and neck and check and everything, and seemed to be in order. But what it was, the fillings, my teeth popped out. Popped, I guess
From the shock?
From the blast?
Concussion, I guess.
Yeah.
And this right ear was fouled up for about 6 years, so I couldn't sleep on that. But I fared pretty well compared with a seaman, an 18-year-old seaman. A piece of shrapnel hit his lower area, and he could never become a biological father. He could never become a... And the doctors grafted a piece of pigskin on his body through which he was able to relieve himself.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah,
So freedom's not free.
Freedom's not free.
Yeah, and
No.
we don't hear about those kinds of wounds very often, although they're common.
No, I wrote wrote an article for the Metro Mail Tribune, I guess 4 years ago, and they left that part out. I guess they thought it was a little bit raw, you know. But yeah.
Well, we don't, and not to mention the fact that the level of medical care that we have today compared to what it was then is just, the difference is just so phenomenal.
Yeah.
You know, and what you guys, you were patched up and sent back. I mean, you didn't get sent home; you got sent back. All right, so let's go back to. I have a note here that you met your wife in Australia. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
Tell us that story.
Well, my ship finally went. We were in the fringe area of the Coral Sea battle, and then we got to Sydney, and they needed a yeoman at the 7th Fleet in Brisbane, so I was transferred up there. And we were in on one floor of this building, and General MacArthur was on the next floor, and we were getting ready to go back into the Philippines and take the Philippines. And while I was there, I met her, Burrow, and got a picture over here. So anyway, we were together 64 years, and there's a picture of her.
Look at that. Look at that, Sergeant.
Well, that's a good-looking lady.
Well, I tell you what, a good-looking couple there.
64 years, and this was, and you met her there.
Yeah.
Did you get married there?
Yeah, we were. It was that picture was taken in Brisbane, and, about 2 weeks after we were wed.
Really? So, did you just stop sending your mom the money then?
No, I didn't. No, it's amazing. It's amazing. We could go out there in Brisbane and have each of us have a steak and sliced tomatoes and glass of milk, and I give the waitress $1 for the 2 meals.
Yeah.
She'd bring me back about 33 cents change.
No kidding.
And I'd leave the 33 cents, and she thought it was being extravagant.
Oh, wow.
That was back in the day when $1 was $1 in silver.
Let me tell you about a little run-in I had with General MacArthur. I know Pastor Pete, my church pastor, he gets a bang out of it. But
So,
it was raining. I'd gone out to lunch, and it was raining. I came back, and I ran up the steps there at the building, and who should I bump into? Oh, I had a soft belly, and I looked up, and here's this cat with all the scrambled eggs on it, you know. So I jumped aside and saluted him and apologized, and he was very gracious. He said, "That's all right, son. I get in a hurry at times." So it was real funny.
And that was your meeting of
That was my
meeting of
introduction.
General MacArthur.
I could feel his soft belly, and I said, "Oh, brother."
One of the greatest generals in American history.
Oh yeah, indeed.
Oh, boy.
And he had I made a friend of his chef that he brought from the Philippines. And could he make good pies? But I always made it a point not to be there when the general came in, you know, at the hotel.
Wow. So you went on to the Philippines. You fought?
No. I had been overseas 4 years, and now here's where it's advantageous to be a yeoman. I was right next door to the admiral, and I got to know him, and I would write poetry. And he had an Australian girlfriend there, and she would come in and visit him, and he'd get on the intercom and say, "Hines, bring in your latest poetry." So I'd bring it in, and so through that relationship, he arranged for me to fly up to Hollandia, New Guinea, and then he arranged for me to get back home, back down to Brisbane to pick up my wife and to come home. So now, if I hadn't had that close relationship with the Admiral Kincaid, I wouldn't have had that break. You know.
Wow.
And what does that say about American warriors? Bring in your latest poetry.
Bring in your praise, bro.
Yeah.
That is.
I love that.
Oh, this is just wonderful.
You realize, Perry, we're surrounded with Navy today
Let me
because
tell
we
you-
got a Marine here, so
Yeah.
we're all Navy here.
Let me tell you another advantage. Am I going to run over time?
No,
here?
you're fine. Well, I'll watch
Let me tell you another advantage of being a yeoman. See, when I prepared my orders there in Hollandia, New Guinea, getting ready to depart back to Brisbane, I left the date off of them. So I got back to Brisbane, and I got in there about 1 o'clock, and Burrow, she was astounded. I said, "Look, I got some undated orders here." And I said, "We're going to go back up where we had our honeymoon, back up on the beach there." So we went up there, and we stayed there about 3 weeks. And then I said, "Well, I guess I should report into the chief down at the naval station there in Brisbane." So I did, and he looked at me, and he said, in the meantime, I'd gone to the World Wars and picked up a stamp, and I stamped in 15 days leave there. So
For yourself.
So see, I had my own records. So I said, well, it looked kind of peculiar to be over here all this time and no leave at all.
Yeah.
So I stamped in 15 days. So I got down, and the old chief says, "Hines, you've been overseas 4 years and you only had 15 days leave." I said, "Well, there's the record." He said, "How about giving you a month's leave?" I said, "Okay, that's great."
Oh, okay.
So I get back to the house. I say, "Hey, let's go back up to where we had our honeymoon." So we went up for a whole month up there.
No kidding. What a story.
So there's a lot of advantage in being a yeoman. You know?
Boy, I'll say.
Oh man, yeah. Particularly when you handle your own records, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me fast forward. What was it like when the war was over and you got out?
Well, I didn't know what was in store for me. I'd had experience in personnel work, and so I got a job at Lincoln Mercury Division Ford Motor in Los Angeles as an assistant personnel manager, and I got to know some very influential people there in that organization, and they treated me well. But back to your question, I didn't really know what I wanted. I'd been, Uncle Sam had been governing my life for 6 years, and so it took me a while to become adjusted to civilian life.
Well, let me just pause here. Marion said the same thing. He was home 3 days. He couldn't handle it. He took off to Los Angeles. Sergeant Adams over there is nodding his head. I guess it's hard for any of us to understand who have never been in a war zone or theater to come out of that and just seem like you got to forget that and become this again. But you're a military man, now you're a civilian.
Yeah.
That sudden change, you just couldn't handle it. You want to say something about that, Todd?
Yeah, it's tough. I think when you're in, it's so rock solid what you're supposed to do. You've got your job, you've got your rank, and it's all there. It's never going away. And once you leave, that all just goes away. And it's so fast. It's a hard adjustment to make.
Yeah. Was that for you, Bob?
Yes, indeed. Yeah.
But you're married, and your wife's looking for direction and security.
Yeah.
Did you feel accomplished when the war was over?
Pardon?
Did you feel accomplished when the war was over?
I felt that I'd done my share, what I was capable of doing, and I was pretty much satisfied.
How much did you think when you got back? I mean, your impression of how much civilians really understood what you'd been through? We asked Marion the same question, and Todd. How much did civilians then really understand?
Pretty much as it is today. I find that most people, unless they have a relative involved, like over Iraq and Afghanistan, unless they have a relative involved, they're not much into prayer, and they're just doing their own thing. I mean, I think we have that me, myself, and I attitude, But if they've got a relative in the service, hey,
Yeah.
they get.
I was surprised at the memorial service yesterday in Grants Pass at Hillcrest Memorial that there were so few people that were not somehow related, or either Boy Scouts or somehow related to the military. In other words, civilians with no contact with the military generally didn't seem to show up, which saddened me. But I think it's part of the picture. It's like they didn't understand the military culture, so somehow they must feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Bob, tell us about your coming to Christ. I mean, obviously later in life, and that in itself is unusual.
I was 38. It was July of 1958. Wife and I were attending this little community church over there, Community Bible Church in O'Brien, Oregon, right over the ridge. And there's only about 15, 20 of us in that little church there. And we had a good pastor. And he preached the word, and we were drawn to the Lord. And we were baptized in the Illinois West Fork of the Illinois River, which flowed right close to the church.
That's cold.
It was convenient, So we were baptized there, and I think I've grown a bit in the Lord. I'm pretty much in what like that old song. I know all of the ground is sinking sand.
Right.
I think, and Paul sort of got to that in Colossians. No, not Colossians. No. Let me get here. Well, anyway, no, it was in
That Romans?
Romans 3rd chapter.
Right.
He's talking about apart from Christ, everything is rubbish.
Right.
That's pretty much the way I felt about it. And then in Colossians 2:10, it says, in the King James Version, which I prefer for that verse, he says, we are complete in him.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, I feel that everybody should want to be complete.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody should want to be complete. And Christ is on the winning. With Christ, you're on the winning side. So that's the only side to be on.
There you go. Well, fascinating story. And you and your wife were married 64 years.
64 years.
You lost her in 2007.
Yes.
Yeah, and so incredible life together and story. And we've talked to few that have been part of the Pearl Harbor scene. Are you in contact with other Pearl Harbor survivors?
We were for a while. We corresponded years ago, but we've kind of drifted away. And I guess most of them.
You're fine.
Most of them my age, maybe. I tell her about it. They get to talking about certain. I said, I'm older than everybody. At 91, I will be 4 months.
How do you relate Pearl Harbor to the 9/11 attack here?
Well, I kind of feel that the 9/11 attack, I obviously there was more suffering there. People jumping out of 64-story building and all of that. Then I think of the younger people, the women and so forth, that perished in 9/11. It didn't at Pearl Harbor. Now, one thing I appreciate about the Japanese pilots, the hospital ship Solace was not too far over from Battleship Row. Well, they didn't touch. They left that alone. The battleship Solace had the big red cross on each side, painted on each side, and the Japanese pilots didn't bomb that. Thank goodness. So anyway, back to your question. So many children were made orphans as a result of 9/11, and so many women perished.
And children perished.
Yes, which wasn't the case at Pearl.
Do you think we understand? You've mentioned it several times here, Bob. Do you think we really understand, especially? See, I'm a World War II baby, so I was born when you guys are coming out. Okay, do you think we get it? Do you think we get the price tag of liberty and freedom? Do you think we understand it?
Well, the serviceman does, but like I was saying earlier, alluding to what I've already said, that I don't think too many people appreciate the price of freedom. I remember seeing a young seaman. He was in a radio shack there on the boat deck of the Dobbin, and I hear him hollering, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. And here he was running down the deck trying to hold his piece of shrapnel that hit him in the stomach, and he was trying to hold it all together. And he said, I want to see my mama. And he made it down to sick bay dispensary on the next level down, and the pharmacist gave him a double shot of morphine, but he only lasted about 15 minutes. So the price of freedom, it's very dear, and I'm not sure that a lot of people have accepted that.
Yeah, I can't imagine what you have seen in that arena, and what you had to work with. I mean, if you look at the military equipment today, and maybe Todd, you can maybe expand on this, but what you have in the way of tools and support and equipment compared to what this generation had, I mean, I don't think there is a comparison.
I don't think so either.
What's that?
Yeah.
I don't believe so either.
Yeah.
It's leaps and bounds different.
Yeah. Bob?
Yes, along that line. See, as a yeoman, you're supposed to go in and take dictation from the admiral. You had, like, we didn't have recorders in those days, and we didn't have copy machines. So you took dictation. You had to make chief yeoman, you had to do a minimum of 100 words a minute in Greg's shorthand. And so it was kind of cumbersome compared with the facilities we have today, Yeah.
But in terms of the wounding, the thing that really hits me about the difference is, first of all, as Perry said earlier, our trauma surgeons, we have fantastic ability to deal with traumatic wounds. But not only that, but you guys get evacuated, in the Iraq War. I mean, you get a wound, you're out of there.
Yep.
Medevac, and in a matter of hours, you're in a hospital.
Yes, sir.
Even less, Which you guys didn't have that.
Didn't have
Someone
that.
got more badly wounded, they were likely to die.
Yeah. Bob, thank you. Bob Hines has been our special guest today. World War II vet in Pearl Harbor, the day of December 7th.
It's been my pleasure.
You'll never forget that day.
No.
Ever.
No.
And the only thing I can say is that, thank you for your service and
Thank
the
you
price that you paid. And we just pray that God will continue to give you great peace in your life as you live for Him, Bob. So
We're
thank you so much.
honored to be in both the presents.
Thank you very much.
All right.
It's good to be here.